And Jeff, at that time, you can start recording. We can trim off the beginning and everything. Martha, just thank everyone for coming. We'll start in about a minute, let them know, just so we can get the recording queued up, and then take it away after that. Does that work for you, Jeff, as well?
Kyle, do you want to introduce the chat feature so everybody knows how they can reach out to one another during the webcast?
Yeah, during the webinar, there is the chat drop-down on the toolbar control panel. So if you feel someone's audio is a little low, if you can't see the slides, or if you're unclear, basically if you have any communication, that's where we'll do it during the webinar. And from the two drop-down, make sure you choose organizers and panelists only. Otherwise, the whole audience will see that.
Okay. Just a question, the webinar is going to be recorded. You're going to be making it available at a later stage for replay?
Yeah, I'll send everyone a direct link to it and the raw video. Should be sometime later this afternoon we'll get it over.
Okay.
And Kyle, should I say that the feature report is on the site, or wait and say that at the end of the webinar, or not say it at all?
Say it at the end. We're still working on getting it up.
Okay.
We'll have it up by the end of the webinar, though.
Okay. And then you're going to chat me after we're waiting. When it's time for me to start speaking, you'll chat me.
Jeff, if you don't mind, Jeff will send you a chat message.
When I'm supposed to start speaking, you'll send me a chat message, right? Okay, so after you send me a message, I count to 20 and then I talk? Jeff?
That is correct, yeah.
Okay, thank you.
All right, everyone, I'm going to start the broadcast, make it live myself. Martha, just thank everyone for coming, and then Jeff will chat you when it's ready to go.
The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Thank you for joining us today. The webinar will begin momentarily. Welcome to RCR Wireless News. I'm Martha DeGrasse, and our topic today is video optimization and monetization. I'd like to introduce you to our panelists for today. Patrick Lopez is founder and CPO of Core Analysis. Patrick, thank you very much for being here today.
Thanks for having me, Martha.
Michael Gallant is with Avasy, a vendor in this space. He's a co-founder. Michael, thank you very much for joining us today.
Thanks for having me.
Robert Oberhofer is VP. And I'm for the wireless industry. Follow us on the web at rcrwireless.com and on Twitter at RCR Wireless News. Before we begin, I'd like to quickly direct your attention to an RCR Wireless News feature report on this topic. Key takeaways from this report include analytics, which is key to understanding video traffic for operators. Also, the key role that policy plays in video optimization and monetization. Also, controlling and predicting video quality does enable new pricing models for carriers, and we do hope to get to that today. And we will discuss the fact that not all video can be optimized, particularly Netflix video. At this time, I'd like to direct your attention to some statistics that show the prevalence of video on the mobile network. This is from the Cisco VNI. Cisco does break out consumer video and business video, that's video conferencing type applications. Between the two of them, you can see that they are the biggest portion of mobile data network traffic, and actually of mobile network traffic altogether. In researching this report, T-Mobile told us that video is now 40% of its network traffic, and we heard the same from AT&T. And of course, these amounts are expected to grow each year. So we'd like to begin by talking about the type of video on the mobile network. There's a big difference between the long-form videos, like the Netflix movies, the short-form videos, like Instagram or Vine, and then the business video, like video conferencing. Now, Ante, at Wind, I'm sure you're seeing all of these. Can you begin and give us a little bit of an overview of what you're seeing on your network and what you see as perhaps the most overwhelming for the network?
Yeah, certainly. Thank you, Martha. Can you hear me all? So what we're seeing in practice is certainly as you would expect, the long form video is more problematic. One of our key use cases is cell congestion or cell site congestion, and certainly the longer the video, the more exposed it can be to other traffic on that same cell. So your Netflixes, your YouTube videos, and so on, those are problematic for us.
Okay, and now I know that you are 3G right now, is that correct?
Yes, we're 3G plus. We're doing a lot of things to approach 4G speeds.
Okay, great. Well, let's go to Robert perhaps to talk a little bit about the move to 4G networks and how that does impact data consumption in general and video consumption in particular. Robert, can you hear me?
Sure, I just have to unmute. So yeah, so 4G networks helps for sure actually improve the overall user experience because videos start up faster and videos actually play much smoother and with less buffering and stalling. And we know that buffering and stalling is actually a key factor that actually impacts the enjoyment of video. And moving to 4G helps. But we know at the same time that moving to 4G is not solved in all cases because there's still going to be cases where the user is in a far cell condition or where we have congestion in the network, where there is still a challenge of transmitting that video effectively at the speed necessary towards the subscriber. So 4G overall is going to be a big boon for video consumption, and we do see as well for 4G carriers that they have a lot higher video consumption rate than for 3G carriers.
Now, do most operators know how much video is on their networks?
Few do, because tools are just emerging which actually give good insight, especially on the video side. A lot of vendors have, a lot of carriers have DPI platforms, and DPI platforms give a good overview of how much video is in the network, but not necessarily what the video is composed of, what are the different elements, if it's long form, short form, what's the bitrate as well.
Okay, great. Now, I know that Avicii has also done a lot of work in analytics. Can you speak to that just a little bit, Michael, and about specifically what analytics can tell operators about the video on their networks?
Sure, Martha. Yeah, I mean, going to your first comment, some of the observations we've made over the past year or so on 3G and 4G networks, and bear in mind this is predominantly in our install base in North America, but we think that's a pretty good indicator of trends of where things are going. But definitely noticing some of the metrics we collect about media traffic are QoE metrics. We have one that reflects more the quality, how the content is put, and another that reflects more the delivery quality, how the content is delivered, whether there's stalling or delays. And we've certainly noticed in both 3G and 4G networks over the past year an increase or a noticeable upwards trend in the presentation quality, and that's really driven by increasing resolutions and higher bitrate content, as well as content being offered with more complex tool sets. So today on 4G networks, we're seeing over 75% of that visual quality being good or excellent, compared to, say, around 60% on 3G networks. So this is, we kind of look at that and say that's a reflection of save, which is where supply kind of creates its own demand and new capacity gets consumed. And we're seeing that here directly, how it's encouraging content providers to provide and the subscribers to consume content at this higher quality. So you're seeing more bits getting delivered to media sessions, and you're seeing higher quality per bit as a result of these more advanced tools getting used. But then, related to the question of how much video is on their networks, echoing Robert's comments, they do have a general sense. Some of the other products they have, but those measures or metrics are pretty opaque. They tend to be very high level, mainly in terms of tonnage by application. There's no real deep video awareness, which kind of leads into your next question. There's much more to know than how much video is on your network. Things like, how many sessions do I have? What's the duration? What are the bit rates, codecs, resolutions? And Robert was alluding to all these things. So then you can start looking for things like the consumption patterns, the trends, the anomalies, and that's when it gets more interesting to look deeper into the application layer with deep video awareness.
And also you can see the stall rates and the buffering rates as well, right?
Yeah, absolutely. That's critical. That's a critical factor. You want to maintain the highest delivery quality possible.
So if operators do learn that a number of their subscribers are experiencing poor quality and an operator wants to look at perhaps a video optimization solution, can you speak a little bit about evaluating software that's specific for that versus just network acceleration, which you've alluded to a little bit already?
So this is directed to...
Is that a question? Who's that a question for?
Oh, that was a question for you.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, network acceleration, you got more traditional tools like TCP and web optimization. TCP optimization, you can do clever things like bundle your apps and increase your window sizes. And these are all good things. And on web optimization, you can do your image compression and combine your CSSs. And these are all good things, but they're complementary to video optimization. They're completely different classes of applications. Web optimization requires web app expertise to develop the right system and architecture. Video optimization requires more of a deep video expertise to develop the right system and architecture. And in terms of video, acceleration isn't as compelling for video as it is for, say, web. You have longer lived flows. Your windows will ultimately get open nice and wide. The server is streaming content that's tens of seconds ahead of where the playback is, so saving an RTT is less critical. There are some interesting things you can do from a scheduling point of view. It's not as critical, but these are still good tools, but complementary to video optimization.
Patrick, would you agree with all that?
Yes, I think by and large, when we look at the traffic and video growth, there's very little else that network operator can do besides video optimization. Web optimization, TCP optimization, as well as caching and other acceleration techniques are useful, definitely, for the rest of the traffic. But video is very different in its composition, in the way it is delivered in mobile networks, and it requires specialist tools in order to be able to, on one hand, eliminate any waste associated with delivering HD web videos in a wireless network, and on the other hand, being able to manage a consistent user experience for all users that want to stream videos in their network.
Yeah, and here's Robert. As video becomes a major part of what is going through the network, in many carriers we see it's 50%, sometimes 60 or more percent. Obviously, the delivery of video gets a lot more attention. And from an end user perspective, nothing is as jarring and as annoying as a video which stalls and buffers, and you have to wait for the video to actually play in a smooth way. And the unfortunate effect for carriers is that publishers are pushing to higher resolutions and to higher bit rates because they want their content to look great, irrespective of how well it actually is transferring through the carrier's environment. And to the end user, if a video buffers and stalls, they're typically blaming then the carrier for not having a big enough pipe, and not necessarily for the publisher in perhaps pushing the envelope a little bit too hard and trying to be too focused on content quality and not delivery quality.
And if I can add to Robert's comment here, I think it's important for network operators to understand that not only video is growing in terms of volume, which is true, but to Robert's point, video is growing in terms of definition. So increasingly, we see videos transitioning from standard definition to high definition, 480, 720, 1080p. And then, additionally to that, video is also growing in complexity. And we see now that, without being overly technical, we see an increase in terms of the profile of the video, the format of the video, particularly in H.264, from baseline to main or to high. And all these actually have an impact not only on the volume of the video, but the complexity of the video. So how much effort is necessary to deliver that video with a good user experience in the mobile network.
Yeah, just to add to that, if I may, the quality of experience, the end-to-end quality of experience, is what we're trying to manage here. And certainly, as a carrier, we need to have the tools that allow us to create that end-to-end experience and for it to be consistent. It doesn't help us to have a really good experience at one time on one cell, and then a really poor experience at another time on the same cell, or so on. So there needs to be a control mechanism, a policy, a data policy, a video management policy that can be enforced to allow us to control that experience.
And that makes actually as well to the carrier business sense. So what we know is that when buffering stalling happens, it's not just annoying. The actual user behavior is to stop watching the video. When that happens, you lose the opportunity to actually send data volume towards the subscriber, which in a lot of cases is where the money is and the revenue is for carriers. So avoiding these stalling events in the network helps to actually increase the data volume. And even more so, there's a psychological side effect. The next time a user has the play button in front of him, he makes a decision whether he clicks the play button or not. And having a good experience that is consistent makes sure that the next time a video happens, the user is actually hitting the play button and therefore will consume again more data. So it's in the interest of the carrier to actually make sure that videos are delivered in a consistent way, especially if the network is in a challenging situation.
Thank you. Now let's go ahead and talk just a little bit about some of the techniques that carriers can use. And Patrick, if you'd like to start off here, I know that the real-time transcoding is something that's fairly new for video optimization solutions. Can you start us off by talking a little bit about that?
Sure. This is I go in great details in the report that I just released on video optimization and monetization in terms of the different mechanisms that are used in order to manage and deliver video in mobile networks. You're right, Martha, that real-time transcoding of video, which is basically taking a video and changing its attributes in real time. And when we're talking about the attributes of a video, we can talk about its definition. So from HD to standard definition, for instance, we can talk about the number of pixels, the number of frames per second. We're talking about the bit rate of encoding. All these attributes are really important to understand and to manage in order to be able to deliver, again, a consistent user experience. So it's very important to be able to analyze in real time what are the device capabilities of the person that is accessing the video, and it will make a difference whether the person is trying to stream a video through an Apple iPhone 5S or an Android Samsung Galaxy or a tablet or even a TV or a laptop. All these different devices all have different capabilities and screen size, and the user experience that will result from watching those videos on those devices can be very different if the videos is not managed appropriately. So that's, I think, the key role of those platforms in the networks there is to deliver a video that will have a consistent user experience across those variety of devices. And then, in addition to that, maybe commenting on Ante's original segue. It is important for network operator to understand whether there is congestion in their network and where there is congestion in their network. And in many cases, they will see that video is definitely going to be impacted if there is congestion in the network. And being able to manage the video in a congestion-aware manner is also key. And that's where the real-time transcoding comes in play. Being able in real time to react not only to device capabilities but also to network conditions is key to deliver consistent user experience for video. To where the video is, generally speaking, so it ends up being, again, a specialist work. You have to have a cache that is specifically designed for caching video content. And then there are other techniques that are being used, such as pacing, which is delivering a video just in time as it is being consumed by the device, as well as new technologies such as adaptive bitrate that are basically enabling to take a video and create separate different versions of that video and to serve the version of the video that is the most appropriate for the device and for the network condition at the point where that video is being consumed. This is a little bit pricey, and that's why in many cases we see adaptive bitrate as a technology being used by premium content providers such as Netflix, for instance.
Okay, great. So adaptive bitrate is a way to really manage some of that longer form, very intensive video, and oftentimes aren't some of those technologies actually embedded in the apps that people have on their phones from those providers?
Indeed, I mean, adaptive bitrate requires an interaction between the device and the content provider. Usually, that interaction is being managed through an app, so it's not necessarily an experience where somebody goes into a browser and actually click on play on a video from their browser. Usually, it's within an app, and then there is a negotiation between the device and the server in real time to basically be able to look at the device capabilities and the network load at this point in time for the content provider to be able to deliver the video that is the most appropriate for that device under those network capabilities at this point in time to have a good user experience.
Okay, thank you. Now, Michael, can you give us a little bit of information about which of these techniques that you're using in your solution?
Sure, Martha. And just to follow up on Patrick's point, at a high level, ultimately, we believe that the service provider needs the ability to set policies that harmonize QoE or enable the congestion management use case, independent of the underlying streaming delivery mechanism, whether that's adaptive or non-adaptive. So at the end of the day, you need to support all of these streaming mechanisms, and you support the non-adaptive mechanisms through transcoding, and you support the adaptive mechanisms through adaptive stream management. But fundamentally, real-time transcoding and adaptive stream management are the only mechanisms that allow you to implement solutions like universal QoE management or congestion control. And that's been a challenge. Real-time transcoding is a challenge that many of the vendors have had delivering, but those are the two tools that we rely on. Caching, it really depends on what type of caching you're talking about here. Are you talking about a more conventional transparent caching? Or are you talking about some of the caching capabilities that some of the early optimization vendors offer as a feature? I would say in the case of transparent caching, which I think Patrick was referring to, Obviously, these are good tools to apply as well to reduce things like startup delay, but they don't fundamentally address the congestion use case. They only store the content in its origin format. So to be able to address congestion, you need the ability to control any session at any time, which fundamentally means you need real-time transcoding and adaptive stream management.
Okay, thank you very much. Now, Robert, is caching part of Skyfire solution or not?
Caching is part of the Skyfire solution, though we see it as a way of offloading some of the effort that comes into doing the real-time transcoding. I mean, Skyfire was pioneering and was really pushing very early the importance of real-time transcoding. I would like to reiterate actually what both Michael and Patrick said is when it comes to a QoE-focused optimization solution, and QoE is much more dominant as a use case for optimization in general. Real-time transcoding is really the key. Most content delivered over mobile networks still today is progressive download, with adaptive only slowly increasing. And we suspect it's slowly increasing because adaptive download solutions or adaptive streaming solutions are kind of expensive to implement for the publisher. So it has to be a publisher really is able to monetize the content very well to be able to basically afford an adaptive solution. So most of the content is progressive download. And if you have a big discrepancy between a very high bitrate file trying to go to a lower bitrate pipe, the only way that you can address that is by bringing the content down, and the only way of doing this in an effective way is via real-time transcoding.
I'd like to also add, if I may, thank you, Robert, for your comments, and Michael. What we found as an operator in our research and in our pursuit of finding a solution is that there's a very limited number of players in this space. The big iron vendors, which we all know, don't have solutions for this. And again, they're not media session aware in general, the big vendors, and you really need a specialized strategic solution for our needs.
Yeah. And sorry,
Thank you
Robert.
very much, Ante. I appreciate that.
Patrick outlined actually, I think in one of your reports, the effort of building a solution from scratch, and it's a significant investment for getting to a point where you can do real-time optimization for pretty much all the content that is going through the network. So
okay,
then there's
great,
shy from that.
Now, before we leave this topic, I would like.
Shy from that investment.
That's right, and it is a big investment. Now, one thing I think that operators want to know about, though, is particularly the Netflix video, and I know that a lot of that is encrypted. So, Patrick, can you start us off by talking about that, and whether does that just have to be cached, or what's the best way to optimize the Netflix video?
Well, the best way to optimize the Netflix video is to collaborate with Netflix to the extent that they are interested in collaborating. I think that we are seeing these days a lot of press around net neutrality, around peering agreement between Netflix and Verizon yesterday, Comcast just a couple of weeks before. Yes, Netflix delivers its video in an encrypted fashion, which, you know, in many cases for mobile network remains a small percentage of the traffic. We're talking about maybe 2, 3, 4% of the overall traffic. It's not huge because most people watch Netflix at home and, you know, on fixed network or Wi-Fi, not necessarily on wireless cellular networks. But it is growing because obviously, you know, as you introduce LTE and you provide those LTE home base station, increasingly people are looking at, you know, maybe cord shaving or cord cutting completely their cable subscription and going just completely over the top. So there's no doubt that Netflix-like services will find more and more space in mobile networks. And generally speaking, if you have content that is encrypted that goes through your mobile network and you're a network operator, there's little that you can do about it. So the kind of things that you can do are maybe threefold. The first thing is just recognizing that this content is coming from Netflix and deciding I'm going to preclude for ATP in terms of actual encoding, for instance. Or if you are a little bit more sophisticated, you can actually maybe break into the Netflix, not break, sorry, but read into the Netflix headers and look at the manifests and actually read what are the definitions that are available for that video session and basically kind of, again, calibrate the size of your tube, the size of your bandwidth that you're going to allocate for that service, for that subscriber. But by and large, from my perspective, I mean, this is an issue and a challenge for the industry, and it will not be resolved without both party, content providers and mobile network operators, coming to the table and actually negotiating agreements such as those that we are seeing today happening in fixed line network between, in this case, Netflix and Comcast and Verizon, where there is a negotiated amount of bandwidth and speed that is guaranteed on both sides, so that, well, the user experience is somewhat managed and guaranteed on one hand, and on the other hand, there is revenue share, or rather cost share in that case, for delivering what we know to be a popular and expensive service, which is HD video in those networks.
So that model works great for the larger operators, but for some of the smaller ones, Ante, what would your perspective be? How do you think that operators like Wind will manage Netflix video? Is it something that you see as a concern?
Well, certainly, it's a growing trend, and a popular one at that. To address this, we think we picked the right vendor. And so certainly Michael can share some more about the techniques. But we think that reading the headers does give us some view as to how to manage Netflix.
Okay, Michael, do you want to chime in on that?
Yeah, no, I think Patrick and Ante have both touched on it, and that really comes down to what elements of session are encrypted, and that can vary depending on the service and depending on the device and the player that the service is being delivered to. We see variations between Netflix delivered to custom apps versus browsers, and even between browsers. So it's been mentioned already, if headers or manifests are not encrypted, there's plenty that can be done with adaptive stream management. Universal QE management can still be applied in those cases.
All right, great, thank you. Well, let's move on now to the interaction between video optimization and policy. Obviously, policy is needed to control these user experiences, and then to move on to perhaps some new pricing models. So, Robert, I'd like to hear your perspective on the way that your solution does interact with policy servers and how that benefits the operators.
Sure. I think when it comes to video, the times where the value proposition was to reduce the amount of volume going through the carrier in general and try to shave off as much as possible, they're gone. It's all about QE. And so you want to narrow down to the specific subset of traffic where you can add the most value in terms of QE to the end user. So policy comes into play to understand what's the difference between 2G, 3G, 4G networks. So you may have different types of policies there. Is the user in a roaming scenario? Is the user in a prepaid, postpaid plan? Is it an unlimited data plan? All this kind of all this information out of the network, from a user policy perspective, can help, depending on what the business cases for the carrier, help influence what type of video optimization strategy you want to implement in your network. And so we see actually every carrier having sort of a slightly different theme as to how they want to address video optimization.
So I'm guessing that maybe some carriers are a little more aggressive about what level of experience is acceptable, or maybe going a little bit more for cost savings, and some carriers are just more focused on making sure that they don't lose any subscribers because of a negative experience, and using policy to sort of control that trade-off. Is that kind of what you're saying?
That's very well said. Correct. Yes. So we see often that.
And now we
see often that.
Good. Oh, well, I was just going to find out if Michael would agree with that, or because I know that your solution works in a similar way. Is that right, Michael?
Yeah, and just let's to be clear, we don't the title of this talk is video optimization. We don't believe in just video optimization per se. We believe in a video service gateway where optimization is just one of the capabilities. So in that context, video service gateway needs to be integrated into an overall PCC architecture, but you can't just use, we don't think you can just, it makes sense to just use a standard PCC approach. Policy-based management of media sessions is pretty challenging. You need to find and identify the media sessions in real time, and that requires deep application layer and video expertise. You need to make your policy decisions in real time. So you need a purpose-built media-capable policy language and policy engine. So this is all highly specialized, media-aware policy, decision, and enforcement. So we see the PCRF in this context more as gatekeeper of the subscription profile, and you combine that with information you can gather potentially from the control plane about QCI and access type, and then bring in the video service gateway, which is media session aware, but you don't necessarily want to be transacting with the PCRF on a per media session basis. There's issues with latencies and messaging rates and whatnot. So you want this overall architecture integrated with a media-aware decision and enforcement point, which is, in our view, the video service gateway, where you have the ability to find these media sessions in real time, to apply policy in real time, and you have an integrated real-time analytics feedback loop to guide all those decisions to implement use cases like universal QoE management or congestion management.
And you're accomplishing most of this from a cloud-based architecture, is that correct?
Currently, it's a purpose-built carrier-grade platform.
Okay, and then Robert, yours is cloud-based?
Correct. Yeah.
Okay, so go ahead, Robert. Go ahead.
Yeah, Michael actually really outlined the architecture, and it's very true that understanding flows, understanding what is going through the network is key to even make a decision. Policy is just an influencer into the decision, but the key is understanding what's the video coming from the publisher, what's the network situation, and depending on that, make a decision whether something should be optimized or not. Carrier's a bit reluctant to actually put another new full GI component into the network, and so we try to actually find ways to make it more lightweight, and therefore have a way of separating the understanding of video flows as well as the handling and the optimization of video flows, and we have therefore sort of a separate architecture of which the heavy processing can be done in the cloud to actually reduce the overall cost of the solution.
So what hardware is involved?
Standard common off-the-shelf hardware.
Okay.
In our case.
Okay, thank you. So let's compare and contrast a little bit. Michael, you said that yours was purpose-built. Can you talk a little bit about where it sits in the network? If you may have said that already, but just to make sure we're all clear.
Yeah, it sits in the core network. I mean, so assuming the intent of this question, dedicated hardware versus cloud-based, by dedicated hardware, we do not mean hardware transcoding, but rather a platform. So from the point of view of cloud or not cloud, I mean, either way, you're talking about x86 servers, and really the question is where do they reside physically? Leaving aside the discussion of hardware-based transcoding or not. In that case, for cloud-based, you're pushing all of that video traffic to the cloud. So today, that's half of your network, and it's only growing. And if you're not pushing all of your video traffic to the cloud, maybe you're implementing a congestion use case where only the congested traffic is going to the cloud, then that poses some problems on the analytics side because you're no longer inspecting all of the traffic. But fundamentally, the premise of cloud is based on increasing the utilization efficiency of some of of the underlying compute resources and sharing them among applications or services. And that we think that works well for lighter workloads or for bursty services, but we don't see video as bursty at all. It's on most of the time, and it's demanding. So in that context, we think it makes sense to provision a certain amount of dedicated resources, specialized resources for the task of managing that traffic. There really is nothing else that you're going to want to share those resources with. So we've looked at cloud, and we can't make a compelling case for cloud, but rather than cloud, we like to look at we like to think about virtualization. That's a more interesting area of development for us. And the transcoding function itself can be virtualized, whether it's on purpose-built hardware or on x86 servers.
Okay, great. Thank you. Now, Patrick, as an analyst, can you share your perspective on the dedicated hardware versus the cloud-based architectures?
It's a really good question. I think that the jury is still out there. Cloud is definitely the trendy, flashy thing, and everybody wants to do something cloud-related. Being able to translate video encoding, which is, as most people know, incredibly CPU intensive into a cloud environment, can yield very substantial results in terms of elasticity and ultimately cost of ownership. At the same time, we have, as we mentioned earlier in this webinar, witnessed the growth of video not only in size, in volume, but also in terms of density and in terms of complexity. And it's going to be interesting to see how the different technologies are going to be able to tackle that. Historically, being able to manage video in real time with a high level of complexity requires dedicated hardware to do it in a footprint, to do it in a way that is economical. But economical, the definition of what is economical is changing with cloud, with network function virtualization and software-defined network. So certainly it's more a matter of timing rather than a matter of, equivocal question. Should we do transcoding in a virtualized or in a dedicated kind of environment? It's a matter of how fast the technology is going to be able to get us to a stage where it can be managed in a virtualized way in an economical fashion. It's a little early today to tell.
Right. There's a lot ahead of us. Now, when hardware is the primary solution, can you give us a little bit of information about where it might sit in the LTE network versus the 3G network, how that might be different?
I mean, it's very similar in 3G and in LTE in the sense that it sits on what is called the GI interface. It's either in an LTE network after the evolved packet core, or in a 3G network after the GGSN. So it's kind of the main point of access of the core network, where basically all the data traffic transits, and that's if you will, the point at which it is the easiest to actually inspect the traffic, discriminate the traffic that is video from the rest, and then perform the type of transcoding and the type of operations that we've been mentioning earlier today. So in both cases, the platform sits in the IP flow after a gateway. And in the case of cloud implementation such as Skyfire's, there is still an appliance in the GI to do the traffic discrimination itself and sends the video traffic to the cloud for transcoding.
Just to add a bit to Patrick's comment, thank you, Patrick. I think it's also important to point out that there are implementations where you do separate the control plane from the bearer plane, and I think there's certainly value in that, and there's also value in a tight coupling between what the control plane, what the monitoring and measurement and the analytics finds out for you, and how you enforce that in the bearer plane. So I think the implementation we have with VASI is as such, with the control plane and the bearer plane separated.
All right, great, Michael. Thank you. Now, does anybody else have anything else to add on the network architecture or on policy before we move on to video optimization? Okay, great. Well, then let's go ahead and move on. And Ante, I would like to start with you because obviously you know about your data pricing, and I'd like to find out if the video optimization solution for you is meant to lead to perhaps some new ways to price video and data.
Certainly, I'll share with you what I can. I think there's some competitive elements to anything I share on the monetization side. But I do think that it's critical that we create a consistent quality of experience because that becomes the framework for monetization down the road. So in a sense, we are conditioning our users to get a quality level. And when they see that consistent quality level, then we can say to them, if you want an even higher quality level, we can begin to look at monetization. So I think it's a very important and strategic step to take to create consistent user experience, consistent quality experience, so that we could be able to manage the pricing, the further pricing of that.
So I know that you are somewhat limited in what you can say, but do you think that in general we'll see more carriers going to more tiered models or one-off pricing where you just buy a video when you want it, or doing more deals and partnerships with the actual content publishers? Where do you think this will go?
I think all of that is on the table. I think that we will do whatever it takes to compete. And I think that if you see the deals that we're seeing even now, even yesterday, and so on, if you understand that, for example, we're a new player in an incumbent territory that has 4G already or LTE already, we're a 3G plus operator, and so we will do what it takes to compete. And so all of those things are on the table for us.
Finally, we didn't talk about actually inserting ads or app promotions into what the user sees, but is that something else that is probably on the table?
Yes. Martha, over to you.
I'm so sorry, my mic was muted. Sorry, my mic was muted. Patrick, I was asking you if you could chime in with what you're hearing from the other operators.
Indeed, I think that at the same time as those discussions and negotiations are taking place with content providers, network operators are looking at a novel way to charge for video, and it translates into different type of initiatives. You're seeing network operators starting to separate video from the rest of the services, from the rest of the traffic, and separating video from voice and from data, generally speaking, on their bill, and charging for video separately. We've seen earlier this year a couple of network operators that have started charging for video on a duration basis, so charging for video per hours rather than per gigabyte. You mentioned advertising. I think we can talk about advertising. We can talk about sponsored data. We can talk about sponsoring. These are all on the table. And look, if you're a network operator and 60–70% of your traffic is going to be video, probably at least as much of your costs are going to be associated with delivering video. There's no way you're not going to find a way to make that video experience really good so that people enjoy it, and at the same time an experience that people are ready to pay for. And when I say people are ready to pay for, it's not only necessarily the subscriber that is going to bear the cost associated with delivering those videos. As we have mentioned, we have seen a new business model emerge with AT&T and sponsored data, for instance, that are offering enterprises and content provider the ability to actually pay for video being delivered or for content being delivered for subscribers in order to basically have better brand awareness and advertisement. And I think that that's the key of the new business models going forward for mobile networks. I think that when we see that the dominant players in the media industry are increasingly looking at mobile as a platform to deliver their content, I'd be very surprised if there were not new business model to emerge to monetize that content and to provide a user experience that is really good and that people are ready to pay for. A user experience that is really good is going to require some alterations to net neutrality rules, and I think that's what we're seeing right now.
Now, do you think that the sponsored data models will be available to smaller carriers as well, or just to the tier ones?
I don't see why not, but I think it's going to be a matter of scale. You know, I have no doubt that the Netflix and the YouTube of this world, we have agreements with Vodafone, AT&T, Verizon, the large network operators, and you'll see a half dozen, major content providers and half dozen operator group that will make their arrangements. But that's not where the market is at. The market and the importance is all the other 500 network operators and 100,000 content providers that need to find a way to do that. So I think there is a lot of space in that market for entities to mediate those business models. In the past we have seen companies that are doing a mediation of international data traffic or international messaging traffic. I think that there's a great opportunity for video in that space. I think that it requires specialist skills. It requires a specific know-how, but at the same time, it is one of the content or one of the services that, users can't get enough. They're ready to have more and more and to pay more and more. And you know what? Content providers want to push it, and announcers want to be able to advertise. So I think, as far as video is concerned and mobile video is concerned, there are a lot of opportunities out there.
Indeed. Okay, Michael and Robert, I'm sure that both of you also talked to some of the smaller operators. Robert, do you want to begin? Just tell us quickly. We are running low on time, but I'd like to hear what you're hearing from some of the operators when they think about ways to maybe monetize their video.
Yeah, we're actually seeing that there's a lot of innovation when it comes to pricing of content and making content and data available in emerging countries especially. The price sensitivity is extremely high, and therefore carriers are very innovative in trying to find ways of either monetize services or bundles of data or experiences and either have pay by the hour, pay by the day, or sponsored activity as well. And so Skyfire and Opera as well is very active in these areas, and it's a lot of conversations happening in this area.
Great.
And,
well, please.
Yeah.
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Full stop.
Okay, great. Michael, what are you hearing?
Yeah, no, we're definitely seeing a lot of innovation in the charging models, and that's one of our focal points here, is to be able to offer the most flexibility to different service providers in the different geographies to support these different charging models. But most of them have been touched on already, things like premium subscribers. Premium CDN is another one that we hear about a lot and are engaged in discussions. Some of the more novel ideas that are being discussed are around quota management and video minutes. If you're able to measure your media traffic in terms of time as opposed to tonnage, then that becomes something interesting. But yeah, most of the others have already been discussed here.
Okay, great. Well, we are about out of time, so I would like to thank all of you for being here today. Patrick Lopez, founder and CEO, Core Analysis. Patrick, thank you very much for being here today.
Thanks a lot for having me, Martha.
It was great. Michael Gallant, co-founder of Avasy. Michael, thanks for being here today.
Thank you, Martha.
And Robert Oberhofer with Skyfire, an opera software unit. Robert, thank you for being here today.
Thanks, much appreciated.
And Ante Rupcic, thank you so much for representing the operator perspective here today. It was very valuable. Thank you very much to everyone. This has been Video Optimization and Monetization, and this will conclude the webinar.
Thank you, Martha.
Thank you.